You know, something rather peculiar happens to a certain kind of people. They don't just suffer the obvious pains of life. They suffer the ones nobody around them seems to notice at all. They start to see through things, feel too much, and for a long time, they mistake this acute awareness for a personal defect. But what if these hidden pains aren't signs that you are broken, but the quiet, undeniable proof that you are wired for a different kind of seeing? We've been sold a very romantic picture of what it means to be chosen. In the spiritual marketplace, to be chosen sounds like a kind of cosmic promotion, as if the universe singles you out and says, "You there, you're special. Here's enlightenment, enjoy." But the reality is far less glamorous and far more disturbing than that. It isn't mystical favoritism. It isn't spiritual status. It's more like having a nervous system that refuses to cooperate with the collective dream. Most human beings live in what you could call a beautiful unconsciousness. They take the roles seriously, believing the costumes and the script are real. This shared illusion is very comfortable. It provides stability and the common language. But for you, the filter has failed. You have been given a sense of perfect pitch for the world's disharmony, and you cannot simply turn the volume down. You are in the theater, but the stage lights are too bright. You see the ropes, the dust, and the actors' tired faces. You are still expected to play your part, to engage in work, money, and relationships. But you can no longer confuse the performance with reality. This civilization is not built for people who see the machinery. It runs on shared pretense, on the agreement that business is purpose and that status is worth. When you fall out of that arrangement, you don't find serenity, you find friction. These 7 hidden pains are not proof that you are failing at life. They are the inevitable cost of being selected out of the illusion. You are not broken. You are simply unsuited for the old illusions. And the first way this incompatibility manifests is in the simple, yet agonizing inability to participate in the social lie. The first pain is the pain of losing the only home you ever knew. It starts very quietly. You walk into an ordinary room, people laughing, exchanging updates, nodding in all the right places, and something inside you quietly flinches. A thin film of performance covers everything. Words say, "I'm fine." Eyes say, "Help." Bodies say, "I'm terrified." And you register all of it at once, like a radio that suddenly picks up every station. You used to be able to switch that radio off. Now you can't. Human societies run on a certain amount of shared pretending. We agree not to mention the elephant in the room, and in return, we get a feeling of safety and normality. That agreement used to be your home. Then one day it stops being home. You can't unsee the tension in a jaw, the falseness in a compliment, the laughter that never reaches the belly. And suddenly, the crack that started in one room runs straight through every wall of the house. You sit with your family and realize you can't take pleasure in the old conversations, the familiar topics. Who's getting married? Who's still not settled? The weather, the prices, the 100th retelling of the same holiday story. Everything lands with the soft thud of something already dead. You smile, you nod, you even laugh on cue, but inside a voice whispers, "We are all politely pretending this still matters." You open a packet of food, and the bright colors do all the talking, while the taste has nothing left to say. You turn on the news and see less information, more theater. Faces arranged to look concerned, outraged, triumphant. Stories framed to keep you afraid, angry, engaged with the show. And in that moment you realize every ritual that once felt like belonging has quietly turned into a performance you can no longer believe in and cannot yet bring yourself to walk away from. You are still physically there, But the ordinary world has become uninhabitable. That is where the real pain truly begins. Not in the seeing, but in the slow, crushing discovery that the only home you ever had was made of smoke, and now you are the only one who can't breathe it anymore, while everyone you love keeps calling the smoke home, and wonders why you are suffocating in the same room. The second pain is the financial disconnect. You've seen through the illusions of status and identity, but the world still insists on trading in tokens, not awareness. And once you see the token as token, just the symbol, a way of measuring wealth, and not wealth itself, something very quiet happens. It begins to lose its spell over you. Because real wealth, you see, is not what you can count. It's the air that finds your lungs without being asked. It's the water that knows how to be wet. It's the food that becomes your body. It's the shelter that holds space for you to rest. It's the time you have to simply exist. Money is just the bookkeeping, but the bookkeeping is not the life. The usual motivators that drive society, fear of poverty, the race for status, the glittering promise of more, don't grip you in quite the same way. The threats don't frighten, the prizes don't shine. And this is where the pain begins. Bills still arrive, rent's due, children need to eat, so you find yourself in a strange crossfire. One part of you can't take the game seriously, while another part must survive inside it. From the outside, this looks odd. You don't hustle like everyone else. You're not feverishly climbing the ladder. You might even ask yourself, what's wrong with me? Why can't I care like they do? What's happening is simple and uncomfortable. Your system refuses to run on threats, but you haven't yet found a stable way to live without them. It's like stepping out of a casino. Inside, those chips feel holy. Outside, they're just plastic. Once you've seen that, it's hard to sacrifice your life collecting them. Yet nobody offers food or shelter for clear seeing. So there's a gap. The old fear-driven ambition has died, but the new form of participation hasn't taken shape. In that gap, money worries feel sharper because you no longer have the anesthesia of the race. The pain isn't that money gives no meaning, it's that you're trying to stay honest in a system powered by dishonesty about what money is. The third pain is realizing you've been trained to be a container for everyone else's overflow. You walk into a room, and before anyone speaks, your body fills up. Their fear pools in your chest, their frustration in your jaw, their dread in your stomach. You arrive empty and leave full. Full of feelings you can't name, full of tensions without story, full of the fatigue that feels like carrying suitcases that aren't yours. This wouldn't be painful except for one thing. You were taught that this is what love looks like. That being useful means being available. That caring means absorbing what others cannot hold. What once felt like a quiet talent for reading a room now behaves like a sponge in a world that treats you as free cleanup service. You soak up what others cannot face, then turn on yourself, calling it weakness. You assume your nervous system is defective and everyone else is fine. Your mind presents a fork. Either learn to be a wall, grow armor, stop feeling, or stay open and drown. Imagine being a cup, never taught it could say no. Everyone else's cup has a lid, but yours doesn't. They pour into you because you're always there, always ready, always willing. And when you finally overflow and crack, they ask, why can't you hold more? Why are you so fragile? You are left with a terrible choice. Either learn to be a sealed container, closed, protected, isolated, or continue being the open cup and accept that you will always be drowning. The fourth pain is holding clarity others cannot understand. You sit with someone who loves you, who asks real questions, and you feel the words rising in your throat. Strange things you see, questions that keep you awake, how reality flickers at the edges. You could show them everything, but in that instant you see they lack the framework to receive it. Their consciousness speaks a different dialect. Your clarity would land not as insight, but disturbance. Not truth, but threat. Like describing color to someone who's only known sound. They might nod politely, but the experience remains untranslatable. So you make a different choice. You give them the version of you they can digest. You perform your life, not from fear of rejection, but from recognition that their system cannot yet process what yours perceives. They leave thinking they know you, and you let them believe it. Because the alternative is watching them scramble to defend a reality they need to believe is solid. But you know they don't know you. They know the character, not the actor. The mask, not the face beneath it. And the shock of this, that you can share a home, a bed, a history with someone, and still be a stranger, hardens into isolation. They call you, they invite you, they miss you, but you don't go. Not because you fear them, but because you can no longer survive the slow suffocation of being invisible while pretending you're seen. The fifth pain is discovering you can no longer use anger the way others do. You still feel it, sometimes more sharply, because you see harm and injustice clearly, but you cannot throw it. Where once you could hurl fury, slam doors, deliver cutting words, and feel lighter, now something refuses. The anger rises, your body prepares the familiar attack, and instead of exploding outward, it folds back in and sits with you. You watch your mind rehearse accusations. You hear the old lines forming, yet when you try to let them fly, they taste wrong. Like you'd be wounding something you can't pretend is separate. The world gave you a simple script. Find the culprit, discharge the feeling. Make it their fault. Most people follow it without question. They shout, blame, punish, withdraw love, and call that expressing how I feel. You don't get that luxury anymore. You know too much about what anger does as a weapon. You see how it lands in the other's nervous system, hardens their defenses, deepens the very patterns that hurt you. So instead of handing your rage to someone else to carry, you end up carrying it yourself. You stand there full of heat and don't let it rip through the room. You bite back the easy insult. You stop the text mid-sentence. Outwardly, you appear calm, even gentle. Inwardly, it feels like holding a live coal with bare hands. You process. You breathe. You replay the scene and see not only what they did, but what shaped them, what haunts them, what they're terrified to feel. You can't unknow that. And because you can't unknow it, you can't quite make them the villain your anger wants. So the rage has nowhere clear to go. It doesn't disappear, it just loses the old exits. It spills into your chest as exhaustion, into your throat as unsaid words, into your evenings as restless circling thoughts. From the outside, it looks as if you've grown softer, more understanding. On the inside, it can feel like you're the only one who doesn't get to drop their pain on someone else and walk away lighter. Everyone else seems free to erupt, accuse, discharge their storms, and call it honesty. You're left with the strange burden of seeing too much to do the same and having to live with what that costs. The sixth pain arrives when you see that your urge to help, fix, or save people is not always pure compassion. You notice how quickly you lean forward when someone struggles. Advice appears before they've finished speaking. You imagine the version of them they could be if only they listened. At first, this feels noble, but with clearer seeing, something becomes obvious. Much of this helping is tied to your own need. For the world to make sense, for their story to resolve, for relief from watching someone walk a path you wouldn't choose. Beneath the warm language of "I just want what's best for you," there is often a quieter message. "I can't tolerate you being as you are." And this is where the real pain begins. As you wake up, you see consciousness has its own timing. No insight lands before its hour. No life skips its necessary winters because you think spring would be nicer. You watch people you love repeat patterns, stay in harmful dynamics, circle the same unopened door. Part of you wants to drag them into the light. Another part knows this would be a violation. So you stand at the edge of someone's suffering, with hands at your sides. Outwardly, it can look cold. Inside, it feels like your heart is being pulled in two directions. You care, more than ever, but you see that rescuing someone from the lesson their soul insists on only delays the moment they finally meet themselves. And you're left there, watching them walk straight into a fire you can see and they can't, feeling every step as if it were your own. With your heart split between the urge to pull them out and the knowledge that this time you are not allowed to interfere. The seventh pain, and perhaps the deepest, is the quiet shock that you cannot go back. And this very impossibility is the mark that you are no longer ordinary. For a long time, you treat awakening as a phase, something you'll get through so you can return to normal. You imagine a future where you've integrated everything and slipped back into the old self, just a little wiser. Then something lands in your bones. This isn't a phase. There is no way back. The door has closed behind you, and that closure itself is proof a different life has claimed you. Before this, you knew who you were. You had a story, a role that fit. It was a comfortable prison. The costume fit well enough. Clear seeing dissolves that. The you you've been defending feels insubstantial, more like a pattern in water than a solid object. The old identity no longer holds. So you try to go back. You slip into old rooms, old conversations, old habits. You laugh in the old places, nod at old assumptions, let people treat you as the character they remember. For a while, it almost works. There's relief in it, like putting on a well-worn costume from the play you once loved. But the fabric now itches. The lines taste false. Mid-sentence, you feel that twist inside. I don't actually believe this anymore. You watch the old self moving through the scene like a ghost. Recognizable, but hollow. That is the irreversible door. You've seen backstage. You can still enjoy the show, but you cannot confuse it with reality in the old way. The fact that the old spell will not reattach to you, no matter how sincerely you try, is not a random inconvenience. It is the signature of someone who has been taken out of the standard script. And from there you find yourself in this curious bind, where you can no longer quite believe the dream, yet you also cannot simply walk off the stage. You move through your days, carrying a life that no longer fits, with nowhere obvious to lay down the old costume, and no clear instructions for the one now taking its place. Yet this very in-between is the hidden evidence that you are already standing in a different order of being than those still safely asleep. You see, the moment these 7 pains appear, The mind wants to label them proof I've made a terrible mistake. But that conclusion is simply wrong. These aren't wounds of someone broken. They are pressure marks from being squeezed against the walls of the collective dream. You are not now functioning. You are refusing at a deep level to keep lying to yourself. Think of these pains not as defects, but as growing pains of a nervous system adjusting to a larger reality. Every one of these hurts is a crack in the shell. The chick does not interpret the cracking of its egg as evidence of failure, even though it is terrifying and cramped and loud. The shell cracks because something inside has become too alive to stay inside it. Now contrast this with the other kind of pain. The pain of remaining comfortably asleep. The pain is dull, sociable, and wonderfully acceptable. It's the quiet ache of living a life that never quite fits, but fits well enough to avoid questions. It is the pain of drinking too much distraction, working in cycles that drain you, saying yes when every cell screams no, and calling that just how life is. That pain is often easier because it comes with company. You can complain about it at dinner parties, blame it on the economy, and everyone nods in sympathy. The pains of awakening are different. They cut clean. They arrive exactly where the lie can no longer hold. They refuse to stay buried under distraction. So you may ask, what are we going to do with these 7 pains? And here is the real joke. Nothing at all. Because when you finally manage to do absolutely nothing about them, they stay exactly where they are and somehow cease to be enemies. At first, you just want it to stop. But if you stay, if you refuse to run back into distraction, something quiet begins to happen. The pains stop shouting and start teaching. Here is what each of these pains is secretly teaching you, if you let it speak. The moment you realize you lost the only home you ever knew, you learn home was never a place, but a feeling you carry inside. Financial disconnect shows real wealth was never printed on paper. It's the time you have, the attention you can give, the miracle of being alive. Money only matters when it serves those things. Feeling others' feelings teaches you the sacred difference between true empathy and drowning for others. Holding clarity teaches you that giving people the version they can digest protects both of you from forcing an impossible connection, even if it means remaining quietly unseen. Dissolving rage teaches you that the true freedom comes not in blaming others, but in seeing your rage as a mirror to your own wounds. Fuel for self-understanding, not a weapon. Compassionate detachment teaches love is not rescue. Consciousness awakens on its own schedule. And the door that closed behind you teaches the self you can't return to was never static. Change is natural unfolding. And here is the lovely paradox. You become more sensitive and more resilient at exactly the same time. Not resilient by growing thicker skin, but like water. It yields to pressure, yet is never defeated. You learn to dance with pain instead of wrestling it. Some days you lead, some days pain leads. And slowly you discover pain is the most honest dance partner you've ever had. Over time, a strange sweetness creeps in. Not because you enjoy suffering, but because you recognize these pains as the price of being fully alive. You wouldn't trade them for the comfortable numbness you once called peace. You begin to live in the world, but not of it. Participating in the play while knowing it is a play. All of these pains are perfectly real, yet from a distance you can see them differently. In the middle of every pain, there is something watching, something untouched, like the sky behind clouds. The pains are real, but they are not you. They are just passing through. So carry them lightly. They are the tuition fee for the only education that ever mattered. When they return, as they will, greet them with the secret smile of someone who finally knows. Yes, this hurts, and thank God I am awake enough to feel it. The shell has cracked. The light is fierce, and you were never meant to live inside the egg forever.